If we turn our backs and spit in his face, is God still gonna bless the USA?
R.C. Sproul, in his book, The Holiness of God, says this about him. What God does is always consistent with who he is. He always acts according to his holy nature. God's internal righteousness is the moral excellence of his character. It is rooted in absolute purity. There's no shadow of turning in him. As a holy God, he is utterly incapable of an unholy act. There is a consistency in God, a straightness about him. Greetings, Patriots. I'm Perry Green. Welcome to our God in America podcast. I'm intrigued by the spiritual war in which we find ourselves. From God's perspective, it is a holy war to advance his kingdom. From the enemy's side, it is an unholy war in which the fallen spirits attempt to undermine and usurp the Lord's authority. All of God's creation is involved in the conflict, and God repeatedly gives us opportunities to declare our loyalties. One of the most infamous examples of an unholy war is the Albigensian Crusade launched by the Catholic Church to eliminate the Cathar heresy in southern France in the early 13th century. Ostensibly, it was a holy war aimed at preserving the integrity of Christian doctrine. Still, the crusade quickly devolved into a campaign of ruthless violence, mass killings, and the destruction of entire communities. The brutality of the conflict, exemplified by the phrase, "kill them all, God will know his own," betrayed Christian principles of mercy and forgiveness. Many historians regard this crusade as an example of religion being abused to justify political and territorial expansion. The illicit influence of the papacy drove many countries into war. Reformers in the 16th century demanded a separation of church and state to keep the church out of the government's business and the governments out of the churches. However, in no way were the governmental leaders restricted from exercising their religion and faith freely. The church and the government were to stay in their respective lanes, relying on influence, not overt power, for control. When Uzziah became the king of Judah, he was faithful to God, and the Lord blessed him. He had success on the battlefield and developed a prideful arrogance. Notice where his conceit led him in 2 Chronicles 26, verses 16 to 19. But when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction, for he transgressed against the Lord his God by entering the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. So Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him were 80 priests of the Lord, valiant men. And they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary, for you have trespassed. You shall have no honor from the Lord God." Then Uzziah became furious, and he had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was angry with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead before the priests in the house of the Lord, beside the incense altar. This is an example of separation of church and state. Uzziah was not to cease believing in and serving God, but he was not to take on the role of the priests. He held the position of national monarch. They held theirs as the spiritual leaders. He may have had good intentions, but he overstepped his God-given authority. When our Supreme Court stopped prayer in schools and removed the Bible, they overstepped their constitutional responsibility and authority. The justices violated the First Amendment by prohibiting the free exercise of the religion of teachers, students, and administrators. They launched an unholy war against Christian believers. Thankfully, President Trump has returned prayer to our schools. Perhaps our innocent children will make a difference as they pray for America. We understand that there are times when nations must participate in just wars to defend life and property. However, this spiritual war is against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. In 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 4, Paul wrote, "The God of this world has blinded the eyes of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God." So we fight. using the spiritual weapons at our disposal to free people from Satan's grip and aid the redemption process. Well, thanks for streaming today's lesson. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to our podcast. If you'd like to donate to our ministry, please visit our website at godinamerica.com. That's the word God, the letter N, America.com. As we close, let's keep the light of fighting the holy war against the unholy burning.